It's me, Doug. I'm coming at you from the reaches of outer space. Sorry, I got my speakers turned up too loud. Hope y'all's doing good. I'm doing pretty good today. It's really nice outside, and it's a beautiful Sunday morning. Axel's in here aggravating me because I'm on the computer instead of taking him outside. He's like, I'm going to wait till you start doing that show thing you do, and I'm going to come in here and aggravate you and stick my old wet nose on your arm and whine. Ooh. Yep. So, yeah, I got that going on. We got all kind of people here in the chat. We got Jalapeno Milk. And yes, I know that's jalapeno. That was a Trailer Park Boys reference. Jalapeno. We've got Model 316. We got Lorenzo Sleestack. We've got Tonic Mole himself in the chat, and he'll be joining us here in just a minute. And we got Hero Ship Paradox. It says, howdy, Mr. Doug. What's up? I get called Mr. Doug at work, so it's kind of weird. Like, hey, Mr. Doug. I'm like, hey. So, let's go here and look at our stuff like we usually do. Napalm Bros. It's at 12:32. It seems like it goes up a little bit every day. 12:32 with 33 days left. We're getting really close to that first stretch goal. So let's keep sharing that out. If you haven't backed it, if you haven't, go check it out. It's pretty cool. I'll give you the link right here. You can go look at it for yourself. If it looks like something you'd like to purchase, then feel free to do that. It's $10 shipped in the United States. And then we've got the one and the only Saving the World #1 by Tonic Mole at $5.80. That's another thing I like. This one keeps going up. Every time I look at it, it's going up. So I'm tickled to death about that. 32 backers, got 19 days left. This thing should be double what it is right now. It's a cool looking book. We're going to get Tonic Mole on here in just a second to talk about it, because that's what I do sometimes, on occasion. Randomly. So, and then soon we're going to get Mr. Eric Hawkins on here to talk about the Zombiful World of Oz. He's got issue 2 coming soon. Go and check this out. Go to Kickstarter, search for it. Hit the save button there. Sign up so you'll get notifications about it. These indie books is the stuff we need to be supporting because it's good stuff. We got the Needle Movers in the chat. It just says Doug. Hey. And we got Eric Hawkins himself in the chat. What's up, Eric Hawkins? So yeah, it's a pretty nice day here. Just kind of chilling, and we're gonna shoot Tonic Mole the link now, so he can come on here and tell us about his book, if I can remember how to do this. Like I say, I forget every time. I don't use Hangouts much anymore. I don't care for it, to be honest. So let me go shoot him that real quick. I'm not going to drop it here in the chat. We'll get, who knows who'd pop in. It's not Tonic Mole. So I just DM'd you that link, so feel free to drop in. And let me go to display. We'll turn on some audio so you guys be able to hear him when he pops in. Let me adjust these things down here. I'll adjust me. And there we go.
Can you see and hear me?
Yeah, what's going on? You won't be able to see me because you're just seeing my avatar.
That's okay.
Everybody else can see me. That's what's important. So how you doing today?
Oh, pretty good. Pretty good.
Awesome.
I think
Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wait, I see. I started hearing what we just said.
You started hearing the YouTube feed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that always will throw you off.
Let me see here. Okay. Now I'm better.
All
right.
right. Awesome. So it seems like your campaign is going pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. My goal was that get over that $500 hurdle. And so I got there. So I was like, okay, that's cool. And I'm hoping that, things kind of pick up more. Just the past week, there's been a bunch of people contacting me and stuff. So, that's pretty cool.
Yes, I mean, sometimes it takes a while for it just to kind of get around,
Yeah.
And I believe at this point it's now when everybody's starting to notice there's more people sharing, and everybody who's backed it seems to be sharing the link out too, which is really cool.
Yeah. And, it's kind of cool because and I think the 32 backers or whatever, almost all of them are either peers or my heroes that I look up to, which is kind of funny because it's like the least amount of money you can make on a comic, but the coolest the coolest run or whatever.
Yeah.
Because I'll be shipping these things out to people that hell. Some of the people is what inspired that comic,
Yeah,
to
that's
exist.
really cool.
And so, but on the other hand, it makes me I'm deathly terrified now because shipping it out to just normal, just people that read comics are no big deal. But when you're writing a name of a legend, you're
Yeah.
oof, really wish I had worked on this harder.
Well, I mean, the good thing is if they read it and they like it, and they can always give you pointers and stuff that just normal people can't.
Well, and it is. I mean, it's an awesome opportunity. Shipping these out to these people, that. So I'm really excited. Where it depends on what mood I'm in. So at one point I'm like, I'm the flippin' Tonic Mole. This'll go excellent. And then a few minutes later, I'm like, I'm a moron. And so it's depends on what mood you catch me on whether I think this is a good idea.
I think most people struggle with that. Sometimes I'm like, I am so awesome. Look what I did. Other times I'm like, oh, I hate myself. I wish I was dead.
And the higher I go, the lower I'll go. So I'll be an egotistical rat bastard. And then it's not 10 seconds later, I'm like, oh my God, you've made a fool of yourself.
Oh, well. At least it's on the internet where everybody can see that you made a fool of yourself.
Yeah, if you're going to do it publicly.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, I make a fool of myself every day, and it's recorded on the internet, and I don't think anything about it. I went on last night. Doug Naples sends me a link, and I come on there, and he wants me to do Cosby. And it was so embarrassing to do Cosby in front of him. It's like, I do it every day, but it's like, I don't know. It was so embarrassing to do it in front of him.
Well, I went on the matriarchy, and I was just like, oh, this will be cool, whatever. And George was on there, and I was just so nervous that I just sat there staring at the camera the entire time like a psychopath. But so currently I was doing polish on Saving the World #1. That's what I've been doing all weekend, and so I'm gonna send a digital copy out to my buds, you and the gang, to tear me apart, to go, this is garbage. Because I was like, I'd rather hear it now than when I'm shipping it out, because I still got time to add pages and stuff. So I'm kind of in that mode of refining it before I ship it out. So, that's where I'm at on there. But and and there's a lot of people I've been talking to lately about stuff that, it really makes it, where, you see a lot of people going, well, my comic book, I'm hoping to make, thousands of dollars or something like that. And I mean, just being able to get in contact and talk to the people that I get to talk to is like, that's totally enough for me. Talking to the Brian Bell, and I've been talking to the guy that is a Geek Girl, and so it's comics that I have here in my comic box and stuff, and the creators contacting me and stuff, and that's pretty exciting. Even if I'm not going to be a gazillionaire over this whole deal, but being in the community is pretty damn fun.
Yeah, well, if they're showing interest in it, it shows that you've got something that's eye-catching at least. So
that's what I tell myself. I'm like, they have bound to have gone to that Indiegogo and looked at what I'm doing. So it's a little reassuring.
Yeah, I mean, dude, you got something that's like really different. That's what caught my eye. Like the first couple times I saw some of your artwork and stuff, I get tired of the same old stuff, and you've got your own style going on. I mean, that's one reason I'm drawn to people like Doug Tonic and stuff like that. They've got their own little style, and when I see your stuff now, I know it's yours.
Yeah, and there's a lot of in the greater like indie comics. Well, no, all comics in general. There has been this, I feel like it's the past decade or so, a dominance of cookie cutter stuff. And I mean, the late 90s, whenever the industry kind of started to collapse, that was very prevalent. Everybody was basically drawing Jim Lee. Yeah. And there was no standouts. And it wasn't until the industry fell that we all of a sudden, for me, I didn't, I mean, someone that maybe read a wider range of comics might know when this shift actually more happened. But for me, around the late 90s, early 2000s, you all of a sudden had the Ringo guy. I saw him drawing Robin, but he had this like hyper kind of exaggerated cartoon style. And then like when Grant Morrison did the new X-Men and Frank Quitely, we just had this resurgence in guys that were wildly different than everybody else. And you didn't really see, hell, you didn't even see Jim Lee, really. It was all these really interesting Ted McKeever and all these people coming up. And some of the greatest comics kind of sprouted out of that very low-selling era, really. But then, I think indie comics is having a little bit of the same problem of the 90s comics, in which so many people are being pushed into drawing and creating this very narrow idea of what a comic book is. And I think the definition of what the purpose of indie comics or underground comics has changed a little bit, where in the past it was about being crazy, wild, different, doing what Marvel and DC couldn't. Not what they just wouldn't, but what they couldn't do, going into directions that was just not possible for them. I see indie comics and underground comics as like a guy on a motorcycle versus a guy in a giant Humvee. The motorcycle's smaller, has a smaller motor, all this type of stuff, but you can go down that narrow alley that the Humvee can't. And so, it gives us a lot of versatility. And so being more original and creative and wild. And I feel like some of that has been lost, to where a lot of people are more saying, how can we be like Marvel DC? And it's like, well, if that's the goal, then why don't we just read Marvel DC?
Yeah.
For me, I didn't at some point go, oh, I no longer like mainstream comics. I've always just hit or miss. Like I liked Grant Morrison's New X-Men, and then I liked Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti's Power Girl, and that was it not I can't remember his name now. He did that Catwoman run a while back with Darwin Cook, I think it was. So there's little runs I like, but overall, no, I've never really liked the mainstream industry because of that. Most of the time, they're selling Hostess cupcakes. You know, it's a large corporate thing, and there's only so much they can do. And I think that's being seen. It's being more prevalent, I think, as people get older and they start to notice. Maybe we didn't notice it as much when we were younger, and stuff like that.
I compare underground comics to punk rock. Like, not what punk rock became, to where it was just pop music on TV.
Yeah.
Like in the 80s, when the guys were going to these small recording studios and passing out cassette tapes. It doesn't have the production value of anything major label. It doesn't sound like anything major label. There's no rules. There's no producer telling them, you can't do this, you can't say this. That's underground, and that's what indie comics should be. But so many guys are going, well, your comic doesn't look like Marvel or DC. And it's like, well, that's not what I want.
Right. And, you know, it's like, using comic book analogy, it's like Batman versus Superman, whereas Superman is DC Marvel, and let's say indie and underground creators are Batman. Batman's not going to win in a fist fight, like just going, there's nothing you can do to, and it's a folly to even attempt, you know. They have massive budgets, and they don't care if they lose money because they're making movies. We ain't getting movies, not good ones at least. And so we're not going to make the money back on the other side with merchandising and movies. And so they'll always be ahead of us if we're just trying to go. And I mean, now in the end, if whatever a creator wants to create, but I think that, you know, certainly indie needs encouragement of those wilder voices and those kind of the outsider art, because that is what really the peak of underground and indie during the 90s. That's when you had stuff like Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, and even Image. I often kind of try to separate Image from, because they were a little bit weirder deal, but they had stuff like The Max, which is these wildly different takes on things. And so, but yeah, encouraging a lot more of that. And not that, you know, and to some degree, even with not like my saving the world, it is my salute to superheroes. I've never really written or drawn superheroes all that much. My main comic books were always kind of far more R. Crumb stuff. And as I kind of grew up and stuff, I remembered back when I was a kid, and I think I had this, mainly I was more interested in capturing everything that made me love those comics as a kid into this one little series and stuff. So this first issue is just kind of burning through introducing all like the main setup. But as the series continues, the mood kind of shifts. There's some darker elements at play, and all this a massive universe that kind of unravels in front of you. And but we'll see if I get there. That's yet to be seen.
Yeah, people in the chat, Hero Ship Paradox says, "Oh man, I agree with what you're saying so much." And Lorenzo was talking about R. Crumb, and then you brought it up, so I thought that was kind of cool.
Well, he's kind of, you know, there's these. I see people a lot of times. A lot of these mainstream artists are brought up, like Todd McFarlane and all these guys, which certainly they had massive influence on the industry. When Todd McFarlane showed up, that art was not normal, And I think, today we go, oh, Todd McFarlane, he can kind of draw. It was freaky what he could draw when he showed up. But there's a lot of names and people almost being lost. Like, R. Crumb, which him and his buddies basically invented the underground comics in the 60s. And they were doing stuff that we wouldn't dare do. Well, few people would dare have done it in the 80s or 90s, let alone now. And they were doing it in the late 60s. And so they were pushing the envelope so far. And that was at the beginning of the civil rights movement. So, nowadays in 2020, there's lots of things we wouldn't touch that R. Crumb did. But even after that, there's a lot of these groundbreaking creators across this realm of indie comics. But, a lot of the names being lifted are just mainstream DC and Marvel guys. But Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that is, that was a game changer because, there was R. Crumb. He had a cartoon, Fritz the Cat and stuff. And so, he showed that you could break into some mainstream society even when you're that far out there. But then, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird showed that you can start flat-footed with a black and white comic on newsprint and launch it into easily one of, if not the largest comic book IP in the world. Ninja Turtles, they give Batman a run for his money. They're toe-to-toe with him. It's pretty dang close.
What amuses me about that first Ninja Turtles book, and this is going back to the things about being punk rock, everybody tells you it has to be colored. It has to look like this. It has to be like this. The Ninja Turtles book was black and white, and it wasn't even the standard size. It's the wrong size.
Yeah.
And it still was selling out like crazy. It was completely different.
Yeah,
so there's no reason to follow that same pattern everybody else is doing.
No, they were selling, because, there's a lot of, once they got the cartoon, things took off. But you go back, you look at how many issues they were selling. And this was just a small group of guys. Yeah, and they just had to print at a newspaper place. And so, it was bizarre sized and stuff. It was the paper sizing was available to them. And they were selling 100 to 150,000 copies per issue, long before the cartoon. I think that was by like issue 10 or something like that. Yeah. It was really early. These guys were a massive success before it was even spun off into movies, action figures, and all this. And another Brian Pulido, he was in his apartment making Chaos Comics and Lady Death, Evil Ernie, and all that stuff, shipping those things out. And if you look at those numbers in the early 90s, he was whooping DC and Marvel from his apartment, full of boxes of comics, shipping them out.
Yeah.
And he's still, and he's hung in there. Now he's back with his Kickstarter and stuff like that. And he's again whooping people pretty dang good.
Yeah.
And so, it's there is no rules when it comes to what succeeds and what doesn't. And there's certain things that might be safer. Because I'm a black and white artist. So, I can sit, I go, maybe I'm too old. Things have changed and just black and white is dead. But then I was like, but I'm a black and white artist. A bad color, I just don't. I love the craft of a black and white comic. And so I just like, no, there really isn't a reason to go color unless I have a comic that, I have a few that I prefer to be. But no, I don't think there are any rules like that. And I think that maybe one of the larger problems with mainstream comics is that they think there's these rules. They made a lot of decisions during the 90s that aren't relevant now, but they won't stop. I know that people like the increased quality that happened, from newsprint to gloss interiors, and then the cardstock covers, embossed covers, and all that. But in many ways, it's killing the industry, because those should be special deluxe things. And you could always do those later, but now we have it to where print costs are so high that to make this certain standard, and the comics are $3.99. Well, nobody wants to buy them, because even me, comic book fan, I go to the comic book store, I go, oi, $3.99 is a lot of money for a comic off the shelf. And I think there's a lot of these things that we should certainly revisit. Chill out on the, what pound is this paper? Like, who cares what pound it is? Did the guy write a competent, interesting story? Does it, ignite my imagination? He could write it on toilet paper for all I care, And I mean, and that's punk rock. There's like Daniel Johnston. He's a musician from Texas back in the 90s. And he was insane, but he was an amazing songwriter. And he had a keyboard, and he sat in his garage, and he would record one track, and he has a dual cassette tape player, and he would record it, move that tape over, record the next track with that track playing. And that's how he would build all of his tracks. And he'd make an entire album like that. Now, he's insane. So instead of just copying that, he would start all over. So every recording was a unique one for his entire album. Yeah. And he'd have hundreds of these cassettes, all self-made. He went to California and walked into a backyard where MTV Spring Break was. And they're live on TV, and he walks up and says, "Hello, my name's Daniel Johnston, and I have this new album." And the cover is written in ballpoint pen. He drew it and stuff. He's on MTV with this album. Well, everybody's curious who it is. Kurt Cobain and all these guys are listening to his music. He's getting record deals and all this. And it wasn't because he went through the proper channels or had this perfectly crafted anything. The guy was not a great singer, but he was an amazing artist. And that's all that mattered. And that's all that has ever mattered. And, we see these art industries collapse when I feel people who just don't have real artistic talent begin to force the idea that no, it's not about talent. It's about something you can buy, because they can buy things. They can always keep everybody else out by merely saying, well, if you can't afford this level of production value, your art is invalid. And, that's been the oldest tool in the book from the beginning of time, is to set a standard that costs money, not has talent, And I mean, you look at any comic book today, mainstream, otherwise, and you can pick up a Batman comic and go, these people can barely write. It is incoherent. How did they get that job? And it was through that, to where, sure, there's a better writer. He didn't go to college, though. Yeah. He wasn't in those circles, so they don't count. That person is irrelevant to them.
I don't understand either this whole concept of you have to go to college to do this stuff.
Yeah, and it's comic books.
All you are doing is learning somebody else's way to do things.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much self-taught on everything that I do. I learned guitar on my own. I was driven to play guitar. And so that's, I didn't go to college to learn to play guitar or write music or any of this stuff. I had the drive to do it. And I feel like a lot of that, when you go and somebody else is, I think that kills a lot of creativity. It kills a lot of original thinking. It just kind of puts you in a box.
Oh, it definitely does. And it's harder to learn being self-taught. I barely graduated high school, so I taught myself how to read, and let alone write. And so it's harder because they do, college and all these things they give you templates where they say, okay, this is every time, if you do this, you'll always have a good story. The problem is, certainly with most writers you see in even Image, DC, Marvel, TV, movies, everything, they are so reliant on those templates that they don't know how to write a story. And when you see someone that doesn't use those templates, best example is Quentin Tarantino. He does not use templates. He has never used a template in his entire life. He writes a story. It's like this raw thing that comes from his imagination. And you certainly open yourself up to making old mistakes, but you'll never be boring. And for me, when reading, watching a movie or anything like that, I'd rather see simple mistakes due to lack of training, then I'd rather see this, homogenized, stamped out thing. And that's what, just with comic book movies, you go and see when a Marvel movie, and you will enjoy it almost no matter what, because that template is just boop, boop, boop. It's designed to work. You go see Joker, and it's, a bit off kilter, and it's not using that template, but it's so much more exciting when it works. And I think that without having indie and underground comics doing those experiments outside of the template, left on their own devices, mainstream comics just get unbearably by the numbers. And I think that nowadays, every time I read a comic, I'm just like, come on, guys. It looks like they photocopied a manual onto the page. It's so predictable, and you know exactly what's going to happen. Kind of like when on the Batman run, they announce, oh, there's going to be a Batman wedding or something. It's like, no, they won't. It'll be some singer. Yeah. And then they had Bane show up, and I'm like, well, someone dies, and it's like, whoa, Alfred died. Wow. I mean, these guys are just doing what their teacher told them, and it's like that is the worst artistic creed I've ever heard in my entire life. Well, my teacher taught me. It's like, whoa, really? Did they change your diapers while they were at it? But yeah, not being people got to stop with the fear of what if I'm different? It's like, that's the least worst thing you could ever possibly do.
See, I let some creators bully me into doing things on my first campaign because I don't know, I'm a little insecure in in my artistic endeavors. I didn't know what I was doing, and like originally me and Jeff were going to make Lone Wolf black and white. It was going to be black and white. We didn't have the money. We're just a couple hillbillies in Tennessee. Don't have any money. And everybody kept pushing for it and pushing for color. So I finally got a colorist. And I mean, the color book turned out great. And it looks great. And I'm glad that it happened. But I kind of wish I'd have just stuck to my guns a little bit. Because I don't know. I don't like that. I don't like people pushing other people around and telling them what to do with their art.
Yeah, and I was Jeff's art in that Lone Wolf is, and it's like a lot of comics I've read lately where they're surprising. Like when I read Lone Wolf, I was picturing, a Native American guy slinging guns and all this, and I read it, and there was, a surprising amount of emotion. And like your writing let him Jeff do his job, which I was impressed the most about, because nowadays writers act like there's no artist, and they're sitting there describing what's happening in the little thing. And it's like, well, that's what the artist is doing. But
there's so many modern books I get to where I skip half the dialogue anymore.
Yeah, I do. I do too. It's okay. I think it's okay to have lots of dialogue if it's good. It has to be really good to where you're really interested in every word being said. If you're just trying to set up your story, but not really using like really good wordplay, then yeah, you'll leave. I mean, it's the biggest complaint of readers is that, they say there's too much dialogue. I'd argue, no, it's bad. The problem is it's bad. If it's good, you won't complain. Frank Miller uses tons of it, but he's really flipping good.
Yeah.
And so you love reading it.
But see, when I see all his dialogue, it doesn't seem like too much dialogue to me. Because like you're saying, it's good.
Yeah, it feels like not enough.
You put a bubble or two of nothing but bad dialogue, and you're like, this has got too much dialogue.
That's right. And, but Lone Wolf, my favorite frame is when his mother is walking through the wheat field, and really, yeah, it goes back to his kind of these memories and stuff, because you have this contrast of these ghouls and the graveyard, and then I could feel like, this kind of the bright memories contrasting and stuff. But I did prefer the black and white, but I might be old. I wouldn't go by I liked it in color.
I've got people that, that say both things. It speaks to them. Some people didn't understand the contrast without the color.
Oh, yeah. And that's the problem. I read it in color first, and then I read it in black and white, and I loved the black and white. And I love the color. So, yeah, that could be the deal that I already knew.
Yeah.
But, it probably is it'd be cool. Oh, this is getting off track, but it'd be cool if the present day was black and white, and then the memories were all in color.
We actually toyed with that idea, and we toyed with the idea of the modern day being really dark colors, and then the memories just being black and white.
Oh yeah.
I mean, but in the end, it is what it is now.
Yeah, and I mean it is two really good editions of it, and it just is interesting that it works on two different levels, where you can have that color version that probably appeals to a large number of people, and of course a good comic is a good comic, so color or black and white won't be a deciding factor. But it is interesting that in black and white it can take on this whole new life, that a change like that can be, and it shows that people should loosen the reins on what they choose to do what you think is good, what you feel works, what you like, and there's bound to be other people like you. We're not unique butterflies, so that's where I always think that people, they ignore what they want and like because they're trying to please other people, as if they are this unique butterfly who their preferences will not be reflected. It's like, of course, there's other people like you. So if you like your own comic, there's likely someone else that out there is looking for that same thing. And that's what I've really done with, like, most things I've done seem weird and crazy, but I know I'm not that unique. And so there's going to be these other people like me. And so I just draw it until I go, oh, I like that. And then I'm like, well, someone else will too, because I'm not that original.
Igthus in the chat says, Tonic Mole, do you feel the difference in atmosphere of reading books from color and black and white?
That, not consciously, but I will say that there are aspects of, like, composition that when it's color, I feel the bar is raised higher, because it's triggers in my head, I think, mainstream comics like Marvel and DC, and so I'm comparing subconsciously the whole time. When it's in black and white, I think I loosen the reins a little bit. In a way, I'm enjoying it for what it is. I'm not going, does this look like Spider-Man? There's there's maybe that. Some comics definitely. Dark and gritty, personally, I feel always works better in black and white. I mean, Frank Miller's Sin City, it had one color or something like that. Oh, I think that comic would be terrible in color.
Yeah,
It wouldn't work. And so based on, depending on the material, I think there is several instances in which black and white would be superior for the tone.
I think with most books they don't take advantage of color. Like I said on Lone Wolf, I wanted the colors to make a difference in different spots. And if you look at Napalm by Six, the whole thing's got these different palettes throughout, and the colors really add to everything.
Yeah, and
most mainstream comics, it's colored,
Yeah, and there's a lot of. I see a lot of artists, mainstream, indie, all this stuff. They have this amazing line art that is butchered beyond belief in color.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what? You ever read those comics and they're okay, and they're like a painted type deal. And you go, well, those visuals are passable. They're not bad. And you get to the end and they go, here's the black and white line art. And you're like, why did you destroy that?
Yeah.
What is wrong with people? But, I think, it depends on the comic, which I think people should start really thinking. Don't make a comic because people told you this setup would work, because they don't know your comic. And so keep in mind the idea of black and white. Would your comic come off better on newsprint, or will it come off better on, a more modern gloss? It really depends on what somebody's doing. So, loosen up the reins and stuff, because sometimes I see a lot of color comics that I'm like, that's not it, Chief. Because if your penciler is really good and your inker is really good, who in my case is always me, and then your colorist is so-so, your art has become so-so. It don't matter what happened before. If your pencils and inks are really good and your colorist is so-so, you've just made so-so art. The last person dictates what it is. So, and that's personally me. I don't feel my color is better than my line art. And so I prefer to do gray shading. And now, to be honest, I actually, when I started Saving the World a very long time ago, because I kind of let it set for years, it was always intended to be black and white. And the idea was, back then, it wasn't, there was kind of a big push on race in comics and stuff. Just starting. This was before it all started. And I was like, if it's black and white, people can just decide whatever the hell they want. And so that was a lot of the original idea, ironically. Now, this was probably 10 years ago. And that's when I kind of developed the idea, but then I left it alone. And not just with that, but with everything, black and white lets a lot of people, lets people kind of decide a lot of things for themselves. And so, that's, so in conclusion, it depends. But and maybe that's a huge revolution in comics nowadays, is, I don't know, that maybe there's too many answers, too many people saying this is what it should be. And
I think you just need to decide for yourself, and then whatever it is, if people like it, they can get on board, and if they don't, then and we're all playing it too safe. I think there's a lot of wanting to kind of fit in with some group or something like that, and it's in mainstream comics. Those mainstream writers and stuff are trying to fit in with their group. Indies are trying to fit in with their group, and nobody's doing anything
that would rock the boat. And
it'd be best if we could just put blinders on like a horse
yeah,
and just look at our project and keep our eyes off everybody else.
yeah, we all need cones around our necks. And I say, that's very true. And I mean, it is, as an artist, I think it's very one major goal should be that you can look at someone else's art and appreciate it without reflecting it against your own. It's not easy, but it's certainly something. I mean, that's like, I'm not as good as my cover artist, not even flipping remotely. I got Illustrator Monk on the first issue, and he's a freaking legend. And then Sashi on number 2. I can't touch those two, but I shouldn't look at my own covers and go, I'm a loser. No, I'm Tonic Mole. They can't draw like me. I don't think they want to, but
Eric Hawkins in the chat says, color saves my art. The black and white looks like crapola.
Hey, that is also true. There is a lot of Paul Mounts. I love Amanda Connor's art, but when they brought on Paul Mounts to start coloring her stuff, that's when her cover career took off. Now she gets like 10,000, or I don't know, 6 or 10,000, something like that, to do a cover. And her line art has always been really good, but when Paul Mounts dropped his color on it, suddenly it leaped this massive level. And so, yeah, there's, certainly it is, again, it depends. I don't know. But yeah, sometimes when you're colorist, you have a great colorist, they can come in. And I mean, it goes down the line. That was like, someone was talking about pencils. Pencils ain't so great. I said, well, you only need one great skill. You don't have to have them all. Terrible pencils, inked amazingly, look amazing. It's that the last person decides the quality of the art, or the last skill, I guess, because it could be the same person. There's a person that can't pencil, but they can ink their way out of that hole. I see that a lot. And it's amazing to see, though. You'll look at their pencils and you're like, oh boy, I think you should find a different profession.
The guy that's doing Lone Wolf 2, Jameson, he'll send me pencils all the time, and I tell him, because he'll just take a picture and send it on Messenger. I'm like, dude, I can't tell what's going on. It just looks like a mess to me.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm sure it's fine. And then he'll send me the inked page, and it's the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, and
it's like his inks totally bring it to life when it just looked like a mess in pencils.
Yeah, and there's, and I think there are different people. There's inkers, there's pencilers, and then there's everything in between. And a lot of times we just talk about pencilers, but each of these stages of your art, a lot of us indies, it's it's one person doing the stages, but they each have an entirely different skill set that you can fully lean on. And yeah, I've seen pencil art that is atrocious, and the person's an inker, though. Their pencils is just to, they set it up and they pencil, but that's not really where their talent lies. And they just start flinging ink, slinging that stuff. And when they're done, you're like, whoa,
yeah,
how can you transform that? It's because they're an inker. That's what an inker does. And that is certainly an important thing that, I think, especially with guys who are like, I write a story, I want to draw it, I'm not super okay with my art. It's like, well, learn one thing really good and you'll be fine. You don't have to be a great penciler, inker, and colorist. You've just got to be good at one of those, and then dig yourself out.
You're good at none of those.
well, that's where you start hiring people.
Yeah.
There's tons of us out here.
That's why it takes me so long to get comic books made, because I have to pay people and I have no money.
Well, and that's what I hope that's what I hope, like our little community and stuff starts to remedy, is where there's enough of us all together that if someone needs help, we can jump over and help that person. Because, everybody has a skill or talent. Um, uh, and like, you are a great writer, but you're also a great like publisher, like organizing these types of things. So, there's guys that can draw, write, finish an entire comic, and then nothing. The business side. Business is not the business side of comics is 100% different. And to some people, they go, "Oh no, it's easy." It's like, well, not to everybody. To some people, the hardest part of making a comic is that final part. And so, to where not everybody's going to have this full skill set of being able to write, draw, produce, release, and market a comic book. That's a lot of weird skills to all have combined. So, and there's certainly groups that their intention was to create this infrastructure so that people could help each other. I think that the last decade's biggest problem was politics that infiltrated everything. The people against politics were more political than the ones before. And so the cure was worse than the disease. And what we didn't have was people just chilling, respecting each other, and just trying to help out. And so, I hope that the newer communities can kind of learn from those follies to where there's a lot more community there to, someone needs this, you'd hop over there and say, I get that for you. And to bring down that wall of you have to pay someone ridiculous prices. A lot of these, I see some artists getting paid ridiculous amounts because of, people just need to pay someone to get their comic done. And I think that, a more transparent market in indie comics, it's become too predatory, which is the opposite of what our goal should be. Artists need to make money, but at the same time, there's way too many predatory practices of not everybody has to become super rich off of somebody else. If we all invested now, we would be better in the long run. Whereas currently, it's hard to break out of. Few people have ever made it away from crowdfunding. They're just crowdfunding over and over and over because there's no shoulders to stand on. It's just, that's my hot take on the whole situation.
Well, when I got into making comics, which I'll always say it's a year, but it's been more than a year now because it's been like 2 years. I did the music thing and played music for years, and one day I was just on YouTube watching YouTube videos, and I saw Nasser Rabadi talking about making a comic book, and I was like, here's this kid, he's 20 years old, 21, whatever, he's making a comic book. I was like, surely to goodness I can make a comic book.
Yeah.
So, start reaching out to people, and this big thing's going on, and everybody's like, we've got a community, we're going to help each other out and do all this stuff. Nobody helped each other out.
Right.
Everybody just, they formed their little cliques and then just kind of decided to make fun of each other all the time.
Yeah, and it was a bit of a pyramid scheme situation.
Yeah.
There's some people that got really rich, but the problem is they were already rich. It was in for us. And
see, that's the thing. Why should they help any of us? Some of them were already artists. They didn't have a day job. They've got hours during the day they can sit and do their own work.
Yeah.
All this stuff.
And not to jump into any controversy, but it's like a lady that dates a married man, and he said he's going to leave his wife for me, and she thinks this will work out great, and then he leaves her for another woman, and she's like, what happened? It's like, well, you should have known that a guy that would cheat on his wife in the first place is going to cheat on you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
There's some folks in mainstream comics a few years ago that were ran off because they were psychopaths.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody says, well, they won't do the same to us. Of course they're going to do the same to you. And there's certainly, I don't think anybody is wrong about anything. It's that their degree to which they claim things is the problem, and that's maybe that defines the past 10 years is everybody is so far extreme that that's more the problem. Nobody's inherently wrong. And so these extremes have confused people and dominated the narrative of everything, and almost nothing's getting done.
Some of the things that come out of all this that's really aggravated me, and I don't mean this bad towards any artist, but one guy went around on his YouTube channel saying, oh, you should be making what professionals make. If you're doing indie comics, you should be making, $150 a page or whatever.
Right.
If you're an unheard of artist and nobody knows who you are and you're not proven, why should I pay you a big bunch of money? Why can't you just collaborate with me? Because obviously you're not writing your own story. A lot of these guys aren't writing their own stuff.
Yeah, and it's hard because one thing I say, more power to these guys if they can get paid. On the other hand, then I look at the people paying it, though, and I go, oh, they're being exploited, though. That's tough because here's the cold, hard reality. I hired a professional comic book artist for the same rate. And I see people paying the same amount I paid a pro to do a cover for. Now, indie has many people that I would argue are on that same pay rate because they don't have name recognition as much. Like Illustrator Monk is a great example. His work is so good that, of course, he gets close to pro. It's just it's amazing work. And Sashi is really close to having the same name recognition as a pro at this point, arguably more in indie comics. And so, she gets this thing. But apart from those people that are just obviously, people need to understand that pros are not getting low-level pros. I mean, the pay rate goes indefinitely. A low-level professional and a high-level indie get paid about the same. And indie, I don't know. Those words are really confusing. But let's call all of us that don't work for DC, Marvel, Image, and all those, like a major company, call us underground. Then everybody else is either indie or works for DC and Marvel. Those pros that work in those higher level jobs, it takes a long time to get paid. Amanda Connors, she probably gets paid pretty dang good. I have no idea. I'm assuming she gets a crazy high rate. She's been in the industry for 30 years, and she built up to that. But a normal person, let's say an artist working for Dynamite or something, they're getting pretty much that normal page rate that you hear about. Like a cover is $300 to $400 to get them to do a cover. Amanda Connors might be in the thousands, but she's Amanda Connor, so I think there is a bizarre pay rate. I see people nowhere near the level of a high-level underground comic book artist getting paid more And I don't know what to think about that. I mean, more power to them to some degree. But, I think on the larger industry wise, that is prohibitive, that people need to be a little more realistic. But I see a lot of people trying to get those prices. That's where the bigger problem is. They're trying to get those and just sitting there withering on the vine. And it's like, oh, you've priced yourself way too high. You got to be more realistic with what you are. Because I like to price everybody. I think I look at their art and I say that they're this level, and that's how I shoot prices to them based on what I think authentically they're worth or whatever. And I think that is writers and stuff need to seriously do that, not be shy. Look at their art and say this is what it's worth. And because, well, I mean, to be fair, no, if I was an artist and someone said, hey, I'll pay you $500 for a cover, I'd go, I'm not going to argue with them. And so, there's some of that setting the price.
My thing is, if I'm going to pay an artist a big bunch of money, then they better be promoting the project and they better be like posting some killer artwork all the time. If they can't do streams and they can't do all this stuff and promote the book, then they shouldn't expect me to pay them a huge amount of money.
Oh, no, that is definitely true. That's like, there's more than just the art. There is, first, there's the quality of the art, and that's certainly the first stage you judge the artist on. The second is name recognition. It's just true. It just is what it is. Who are they? Do anybody know them? Will I gain any recognition by them being the artist? That pays more. Hell, toxicity. If I see an artist, they could be great, but they're wildly toxic. Well, that's going to hurt my project, So that's either which way. If they're really popular, that helps. But also, how cool are they? Are they going to help me sell this project? And, that's certainly, and arguably, when it comes to name recognition, if a artist doesn't really have a big name, but they promote like crazy, that makes up for everything.
Yeah, it does.
Just hustling for the project, really caring about it. That changes everything, because name recognition only matters because you're wanting to get as many people to see your project as possible. So say you're not some big name in comics, well, that really don't matter if you hustle for the person. Hell, for me, the hustle don't even have to work. I just appreciate it. And so, that's, I think that is very important. It certainly does feel that within indie comics, it's as bad as mainstream. I'll say that. It's as bad as mainstream. All of the bad habits have come straight over. And it's sometimes baffling to see. Where it's like, who do you think we are? What do you think we're producing? Yeah, some of these guys certainly get paid. Their crowdfunding and stuff goes wicked high, but that's not going to last forever. And if nothing is built now during this boom, we're in a 90s boom, kind of like Image, where Image and DC and Marvel had the 90s boom, and they're like, we're gonna boom forever, and then it all collapses around them. They lose everything. Crowdfunding comics is in this exact same boom. This is a boom. It's abnormal. There are comics that would never be on a shelf that are making $20,000. That's a boom. When you see something that shouldn't be happening, something weird's going on. And it's dangerous, because when that bubble bursts, there ain't no shield. Everybody falls. And if an infrastructure, a real infrastructure isn't built, a fad, once the fad's gone, if you're relying solely on that fad, you're in big trouble.
And we see that right now, actually, with a group. The fad is starting to slowly pass away.
Mm-hmm. And almost all groups. I mean, the group. So a lot of indie comics was not new. It's funny because everybody is like they were born yesterday.
Yeah.
where they're like, hey, what if indie comics pushed back at mainstream? What? That's a crazy good idea. Let's get our Crumb on the phone. I mean, that's the point. It's literally the whole point. Indie comics, underground comics, not indie. I hate the new wording, but anyways, underground comics, the whole point was to push back, to do things differently. And that movement is always very necessary. Counterculture is very necessary because unchecked normal culture will eat us all alive. But again, all those problems just morphed over. Why? Well, there was a lot of mainstream guys. They left mainstream and entered this, and they made the same toxic waste dump that they made over there. I mean, it's not a coincidence. That's why we shouldn't. I don't want to be like Bill Gates and say, oh, a pro can't be trusted. That's not true at all. It's that give us a good side eye, keep an eye on them because they did come from the problem. But as one thing falls another. Mainstream comics is going through a massive upheaval. And it is just because bad decisions. But I don't think anybody in any level of the industry wasn't making bad decisions the past 5 years because it was reactionary. Nobody was creating art because it moved them or they wanted to. It was all this, I'll get them, and I think that's the phrase. That's the phrase that defined the past 5 years of comics. I'm going to show them. It's like, well, your hate made a shitty comic. So whoever it is that they are angry at or whatever. And so, mainstream comics was like, we're going to show them. And everybody left. And then indie comics said, well, we're going to show them. And everybody goes, ooey, and are leaving. We're kind of caught in we were caught in a deadly cycle the past while where nobody was just saying, man, I had this awesome idea. I want you to read it. This is my passion. And we don't see a lot of passion, or we haven't seen. I mean, I see a lot of passion out there. It's that there's a lot around it that is.
Seems like the passionate folks get covered up by the folks throwing the poop at everybody.
Almost always, I mean, you look at even mainstream comics and people go, oh, back in the day they were good. But not if you were there. In hindsight, it's easy to pick out gold and say, look how good they were. For me, DC Comics, there's maybe 3 or 4 writers that you could pick out of from the 80s to the 90s, It wasn't, and they make things look so good. Frank Miller, Alan Moore, and there's a few that my personal favorites, like Marv Wolfman, Alan Grant, that, when you hold them up, he's like, yeah, those are 4 writers. You could find 4 writers in mainstream comics that are amazing. When you're in the heavy of it, it feels differently. And so, I think a lot of people got, rose-colored glasses to the past. It's always hard. It's always a fight. For unique voices, it's never going to be easy. We're never going to win and suddenly be the norm, because once we become the norm, we become horrible people. That's just how it is. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so, it's always this fight, and unique and interesting voices will always people will always try to silence them because they would rather mass produce crap because that's easy for them. And so, yeah, it's always a struggle. And I think that a lot of the toxicity come from this idea that we, that isn't normal. It's a new thing that happened and we can destroy it. And it infected people, It's like what, Star Wars and the dark side. That's the whole franchise is about. We grew up with all these stories telling us what not to do. be careful, watch out for this. And then we're like, anyways, I'm going to do exactly that.
Yeah.
We couldn't have been better prepared. It'd be like if a zombie apocalypse happened tomorrow and we were all wildly unprepared. It's like, well, it's all we've done is prepare for this moment. How were we not prepared for it? But I guess that's just how it is.
One of my proudest moments in comics is a former Marvel pro told me that my book looked too indie and didn't look like a big 2 comic.
Right.
That was the proudest moment I've had in comics so far.
Yeah. And, for me, that's those little moments like that. Either it's someone giving you side shade and or a compliment or something like that. That is really worth $1,000. And so, I think that there certainly is a dependence on materials and money in indie comics, crowdfunding comics especially. It's a giant cash grab, and people are like, how much money you make defines you. And it's like, well, you're in the wrong industry. I mean, it's comic books. You could run DC Comics and you're still barely upper middle class. I mean, we're in a dead industry. And so certainly don't join it because of, those things. But in this first issue, just crazy, awesome things happened to me that made it all worthwhile. Terry Moore let me use one of my favorite comics of all time is Strangers in Paradise. Terry Moore is easily, in my opinion, the greatest writer artist I've ever seen in my entire life because he's expert level at both. And that's very rare. There's great writers who are okay artists or vice versa. He's just the best at both. And he let me use the cover of his comics in the background. And tons of my peers let me use the comics in the back. I got Lone Wolf in there. I got, what was it, Punchline. And I wish I didn't start naming them because I'm going to forget. Anyways, so if you're watching this and you let me, that meant an incredible lot to me. Because, having all my peers in the background, I didn't know I was going to do that, so I drew the page and then just asked people and started laying them in, and I felt really bad because some are going to be so small. Almost all of them are going to be pretty small, so I kind of felt bad but Kira, she loves comic books and playing card games, kind of like Magic, but it's called something different. So I want to do a whole issue where like she's at work at the burger joint, and then a whole issue maybe at some point where she's at the comic book store, so that I can highlight those things better. She can kind of interact with the comics more, so all those people that help me out get a little bit more. I am going to do a full page of thanks that tells everybody, everybody that let me use those, they can see this page that kind of directs them to all the other creators and stuff. But anyways, those, I didn't contact him or anything. He just saw my post and said, hey, you can use my covers. And I was like, whoa.
That's so cool.
I mean, that Strangers in Paradise #1 cover, it's like the Mona Lisa to me, So it's this most important thing I've ever seen. And he goes, oh, yeah, you can put it in the background of your comic. And it was just, I was blown away. And that's the same with the people I get to work with. When I've done comics, since I was 8, but they were terrible. But where I really was like copying and like distributing them in some way for probably 20 years or so, 22 or something. I was in my late teens when I did my first one. And I got off track. Anyways, so yeah, I've been doing them forever and stuff. So, not a lot of recognition or whatever. And But whenever I had done some other projects and stuff. I'd been doing a lot of like CG stuff and all of this, and making some money just on the side. When I stumbled across Pete, on Twitter, actually Jimmy Palmati posted, "Hey, follow my brother," and I followed him, Peter Palmati, and he let me go on his podcast. And I was thinking about doing my comic for real, but I wasn't so sure. And you were on there with me, and I was hesitant because of how toxic the indie comic community was. I didn't fit in anywhere, and so I was hesitant about getting into all that because I didn't know what anything was. It's kind of like walking through a thing of landmines. But you were on there, and oh boy, I wish I knew I was going to talk about this. Anyways, there was this other lady on there. It was a super, like everybody was diverse thoughts and opinions and stuff. But everybody was just chilling, having a great time. And that was actually the moment that I was like, all right, this is what I like. Because I don't fit in with, I don't do political spectrums or nothing, so I don't fit in anywhere. But that was exactly it. And Peter agreed to do a little short for my comic that's going to be in the ash can. And that really kicked it off. And then I saw Illustrator Monk did this amazing pinup of Batgirl. And I was like, that's the greatest thing I've ever freaking seen. And so, I assembled Sashi and then I saw, oddly enough, the underground thing. What really kicked that, like me thinking about underground comics, was I met Tony Sizzle on Twitter, and his profile thing said, his bio said underground cartoonist, and I was like, that's what I am, but I haven't used it in that term because nobody knows what I'm talking about in so long. So anyways, I DM'd him and said, dude, I didn't know another one of us was still alive. I just assumed we died. And, and that really, and after that, I started to meet a lot more. But yeah, being able to just like all these amazing people I admire to work together on, whether it's a cover or a pinup and stuff. And that's really my, as long as I break even, I want to continue going. Well, minimal losses. If I can afford to keep making my comic and don't lose too much money, it's too fun not to. And it is a lot of, working with these amazing people. And
see, what's funny is I kind of felt the same way you did. I wanted to make comics, and I fell in with this group, and I did not fit in. It's like, I didn't agree with these people, and anytime I voiced my opinion on something, I was quickly reminded that I wasn't wanted.
right.
So it's like, okay. And I just kind of went off, meeting people here and there, kind of met some like-minded people. But here in the last probably 6 months, it just kind of snowballed. There's all these people that feel the same way. And I feel the same way you do. I don't have to make money on these books. But as long as I can make my car payment and pay the bills, and I'm not just losing money like crazy, I'm going to do it because I love doing it. It's not a living. I mean, I would love to do it for a living, don't get me wrong. But that's not the reason I do it. I do it because I love it.
Right. Yeah, and and I think that is, like, I would certainly like to be able to dedicate all my time to that. Don't know if that's realistic. I would like to. It's not necessary, though. I've written lots of scripts. Because I get in a mode where I'm writing scripts or drawing. I'm rarely in this mode at the same time. So I'll sit down for a month or so and just be popping out scripts. And then, a couple of months later, I rewrite them. It works really good for me because I have I call it like a Josh Whedon situation. Josh Whedon can write amazing second and third drafts. His first draft is terrible. And I think that's because he goes too far and his scripts afterwards reel it in. So you have these really powerful things because he's not falling short. He was always a little on that razor's edge. I write my first script will be cringe like you wouldn't believe. I mean, oof, it's pretty bad. But I went there, I went this far distance and then I reel them back. Anyways, so yeah, I write all these scripts and I got some that I'm sitting on because there's one script I got I think is flipping dynamite, but I'm not secure enough in my art, or I would have started with it. But a part of me was like, I want to wait, maybe get someone else. But I lost track what I was talking about. We were talking about. Not fitting in and stuff. I don't fit in anywhere, and until I found, all of us, we don't. None of us are necessarily the same. I mean, we might look the same because we're white guys with beards, but we're all Southerners. To anybody else, they're all like, "Look at those clones," but to us, we're like, "We're unique individuals." But we're all Southerners somehow, and I think that is, that probably ties into it a little bit. Artists in the South won't ever fit in, even to the place that they're at. The South isn't. The South has. I have no intent. I don't want to leave it. I like where I live, but there's always this. You feel a little bit like an outsider. Maybe that's everywhere, and I'm just like, it must be because I'm here, but and so that's a kind of natural ingrained thing, and so I really like. I think that's why our group, even though we're all so different when it comes to our beliefs outside of comics and stuff. But the thing that makes us, that's this growing group and stuff, mesh, is that we don't care that we're different. We ignore each other when we say something that, is different than us. We either ignore it or just go, whatever, I don't care. And that has not been common in any level of society in the probably ever.
Yeah, I don't know about you. Well, I know you do because we've talked about it before.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is so hard navigating my Twitter feed because I'm friends. Me personally, I'm just going to lay it out here. I am pretty much a libertarian. Mm-hmm. I think everybody should do whatever they want to. Just leave me alone. I don't care who anybody votes for. I just don't care. But I've got Trump people on this side.
Yeah.
And I've got liberal people. I'm not going to call them liberal straight up, but liberal-leaning people and the conservatives on this side. And here I am trying to walk down the middle. And sometimes I'll like a tweet because I think it's funny, and I'm like, oh no. And I'll click it real quick and unlike it. Because I don't want to offend anybody. But the thing is, I don't really agree 100% with anybody.
Right. And that is, I have on my Twitter feed, I have pretty far progressive, and then pretty far right. The far right and the far left annoy me pretty equally. Yeah. They're equal. And I do, my goal, I try to understand where people are coming from because, I separate. I don't like, people go, I don't like politics in comic books. And then you say, what?
I've been guilty of saying that, but that's not exactly what I mean.
It's true and false. The problem is what words we use to describe things are very, very important because we're trying to communicate this idea. And so here's a mock-up argument. So the one guy said, I don't like politics in comics. And that's what the right guy, the moderate to right guy says that. Then the left guy says, well, there has always been politics in comic books. Look at the X-Men and stuff like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, when the guy said, I don't like politics in comic books, he used the wrong word right off the bat. Nobody cares. We all love Frank Miller, and he has a lot of social commentary, and he explores things artistically in his comics, as does Alan Moore. And then, of course, indie comics, underground comics has always been very saturated in it. But that's not what everybody's talking about. That's not what people are complaining about. There is a difference between artistically expressing something or exploring an idea, which I prefer. I sometimes like a good old-fashioned comic book that's just nonsense, just something fun. But there's only so much. Eventually I need something, tell me something, how you feel or something. But people aren't doing that. That's not modern comics. That's not what the problem with mainstream comics is. And you see that when you read something you disagree with, but it's good. Frank Miller, again. He's always the example for everything. The Dark Knight Golden Child, his latest Dark Knight comic, expresses very far left ideals. I call myself a South Park liberal. I was always a liberal, but now progressives have taken it in a direction that I would say is hyper-conservative. I see, again, words suddenly don't mean anything. But when it comes to progressive stuff, I feel weird because it's like, oh, that's what they were telling me in the 90s, and I told them to go blow themselves. Am I now, because progressives are saying it's supposed to go, yay? Women shouldn't wear bikinis? I don't know. But so anyways, The Dark Knight Golden Child, and I read it, and I was like, this is the point. That's it. I might not agree with everything Frank Miller is saying in this, but it's good, and he expresses it. That's his honest opinion. This is how he feels about things, and I respect that. I respect that comic, even if I don't entirely agree with some of the aspects. I see what he's saying, and I really appreciate it. And it would go for a comic that is, just people I interact with. They'll express, say, conservative views, where I'm a moderate, I guess now. Used to, I was far left. But I stayed the same. Everybody else moved around in weird directions. But anyways, so if it's expressed well and artistically, that's all that matters. Politics was never the problem. Social justice was never the problem. None of these things are actually a problem. It's that bad comics are bad. And their latest tool has been to shove these, what would it be called? It'd be like a fake motion, like, aha, there you go. And it is with, they'll write a terrible comic and then go, but we changed the race of this character. It's like, that don't make it good. It don't make it bad, but it don't make it good. Did you make a good comic? No. Oh, well, then it's a bad comic. But I did this thing, a shallow gesture. It's like that shallow gesture. Oh, cat, go away. But so shallow gestures. That's what it is. And so people go, I don't like politics. It's like, no, you probably do, because if you read The Watchmen and love it, then you actually don't mind. What you don't like is shallow gestures to cover up bad work.
Yeah, Matt Reese always corrects me. He goes, you do like politics in comics. You're using the wrong word. He's exactly right.
Yeah, and and that's that one of the biggest problems, because I've been in this community and stuff, and there's always this pushback of it's loose, it's lightened lately, but there's a lot of thing where the analogies or symbolism and all this shouldn't be used. I'm like, but that's literally the definition of art. It's what we do.
I'll just tell you straight up. I think Tim Lim's Trump comic books are hilarious.
I
Whether you like Trump or not, it's hilarious. And the thing, people get so bent out of shape. There's on both sides. I see people getting bent out of shape because they have AOC comics and Obama comics.
Yeah.
That stuff has its place, and
Right.
it's all funny. And if you like it, there's nothing wrong with it.
And see, and I didn't like when they did the. I'm left leaning, so I'm more likely to vote for a Democrat and stuff. But I wasn't a huge fan of those. Like when it's a politician.
Yeah.
And I don't. It's not because it's politics. It's that, for instance, a Spider-Man comic that you get when you order a large Pizza Hut pizza, I will not respect as much as a more legitimate comic. Yeah. So whenever it features, now I haven't read Tim's Donald Trump.
It's just goofball way out there. It's pretty much their commentary on politics.
Yeah, and see, I love the art though, and that's all I've ever seen is it's different iterations of the bunny, whether he's Donald Trump or then he's the like the ops special ops,
the special agent thing.
Yeah, and but the first comic I've backed is just recently. It was Came in America.
Yeah,
and it was marvelous. But no, and that's exactly right. That because we have been all brainwashed that we're fighting a political war against each other, we can't just appreciate what we do, and you can always put it down. You go, I want to enjoy it. I just politically feel this way, and so that's a deal. You don't have to attack the person, though, if that's the deal.
Exactly.
And,
I agree with that completely.
My dream of the future is we live in a future in which, so I have on my Twitter account, honestly, two people, so two sides of the same coin. It's ridiculous. There is this guy that does this comic. He loves retro art, golden age comic strip art, but also Jack Kirby and stuff, and can reproduce it perfectly. And he's really into the craft of old comics. But he does a comic called Ronald Rump or something, and it's not super anti-Trump. It just kind of takes his most obvious mannerisms and stuff and applies them to Richie Rich.
Yeah.
So he's kind of this bully Richie Rich kid and stuff like that. Anyways, and he does this comic, and it's actually it's pretty dang good. And then you have Donald Trump, and I was like, I want to see a crossover of that. I want to live in a world in which those two comics cross over, because yeah, it is. We all have our different views and stuff, but this sounds dumb. We the people has nothing to do with those politicians.
No.
That's why we're separate. It says we the people, and then it says them. Why? Because in America, they will always be our enemy. We might vote for someone. We're picking our enemy. We're saying, I can defeat that person if push comes to shove, And so, I think politics has deliberately worked to defuse we the people and say, no, there is no we the people. You're against each other based on us. It's like we have nothing to, we're the third party. There is the political parties, then there's us. We vote for them, but we keep a distance. And I don't, not to imply that I'm against, supporting political parties or being left or right or whatever you want to be. But in the end, knowing that, it's kind of like a married couple who watches football. The guy might be for the 49ers and the lady might be for the Dallas Cowboys, the two teams I know their names. And and they watch a game and they're both rooting, right? And they're, once that game's over, they don't start a fist fight and try to murder each other.
Exactly.
It's over, and they can both wear all their stuff, whatever. In the end, they don't have much say in who wins or loses. It's not that important. And no matter what happens in politics, it's very similar. We don't have a lot of say, and it's not worth we the people dividing, our deal. And I think that, I would like to see that.
The biggest problem right now is just where people think that if you don't agree with them, that you don't have the right to even have your platform and all this stuff.
Yeah. And, and I think that money, it's all about money.
We got Tim in the chat right now, and he says, last 2 years, I've gotten more flack from people who are supposedly conservative. The behavior of comics people is a symptom of underlying cancer, not a political side. And I agree with that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I think that there's a lot of people coming out on both conservative and liberal sides saying, I've got to get out of this because I'm getting attacked more by my supposed allies than I am the opposition. What is going on? And I think there's a lot of these people coming to the center. We're seeing it in the comic book community, to where all of us are coming from all types of different angles saying these people are flipping insane. Yeah. And, it's the end of a decade, though. I thought it was funny that everybody in 2019 was like, this will last forever. And I saw a guy say, man, if it's this bad in 2018 or 19, whenever it was, imagine 2050. And I was like, you do know nothing lasts forever. The 80s ended by hitting a brick wall. So you had hair bands, I'll rock you like a hurricane, replaced by Kurt Cobain.
Yeah.
Very rapidly. Nobody knew this shift was going to happen. 1991, and it started. Sonic Youth in 88 really said, prepare yourself, things are about to change really hard. And then 91, never mind, and it changed everything. The core fabric of culture was shifted by the grunge movement is the most noticeable, but it happened with there was gangster rap and all this. It was saying, no, we're done. That materialism, cocaine cowboys, it's over. We're sick of it. It's we're tearing down the facade. Was it peaceful? No. On one side, everybody committed suicide. On the other side, they shot each other. But it was real. Sometimes the change is rather
So what
aggressive.
You're saying is everybody needs to kill themselves on one side and shoot everyone on the other.
Kill everybody. Let's try. I want to try something different this time. But no, there's that. The 60s ended with a bang and was replaced by disco. So, you had Jim Morrison, suddenly you have the Bee Gees. And then 10 years later, this has been happening for so long, it's ridiculous we don't see it coming. Because, as this 2010 to 2020, I was like, this is the worst decade I've ever lived through in my entire life. And I lived through the 80s. This thing is nightmarish. And I was like, but at least if I'm right, 2019, we should start to see the shift. And by 2020, it'll be 2021 or so, but at least things will go better. I think I'll like that decade better.
I honestly think that, like we were talking about the extreme right and the extreme left, I think those will go away.
Oh, I definitely think so. In 2018, 2017, I was like, oh, if I can't wait till 2019 or 2020. We should start to see a rebuff saying no, and every decade says no to the one that came before it. It's been always true. For instance, 2000 to 2010 had movies so offensive. Even someone who says, boy, everybody's offended nowadays could watch a movie from 2000 to 2010 and go, wow, that actually offended me. It was the heyday of South Park and Matt and Trey, and it's the decade in which James Gunn got in trouble for later.
Yeah.
And, that was it. Hyper offensive. You watch cartoons from 2000 to 2010 and you go, whoa, that was a crazy decade. And it hasn't been long enough for us to reminisce about it. And so people don't remember it happened because it hasn't been canonized and all this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the offensiveness. I love those movies. Postal, if you've never seen Postal, with it's by Hugh Bowl, oddly enough. And he generally makes terrible movies, but is written by a South Park writer. Oh my goodness.
I don't think I've seen it.
Oh, boom. That's it has stuff you can't believe was ever filmed. And movie 43, I might be wrong about the number. It was a bunch of different directors, and the most popular.
I've seen that movie.
Yeah. And the fact that everybody's like, James Gunn, shame on you. And I was like, you do know all your heroes were in a movie that is so ridiculously horrible. I mean, essentially the MCU cast was most of the people in that movie.
Yeah.
Now, Postal was authentically good. That movie, I loved it because it was so stupid and crazy. Though, maybe it wasn't great. But I did love James Gunn's masturbating cat cartoon. But anyways, by 2011, we become hyper offended by everything. It's not coincidence. Society felt that 2000 to 2010 went too far and now was pushing back. So they become hyper offended for 10 years. My guess is this next decade is a normalizing, saying, hey, extremes, we can chill out on that. That's what I'm hoping. And really the definitive moment was when I went to the theater and saw Joker. And I was like, whoa, that has to be, I think Scary Movie was maybe, South Park maybe was the defining where we knew things were going in 2000 to 2010. But, watching Joker in the theater, I was like, that thing just rejects everything about 2010 to 2020. That its sole purpose was, you created these monsters and now you're ashamed of them, and so, yeah, watching that movie, I was like, okay, I'm definitely, this decade has changed. And when it made $1 billion, I was like, yep, it's over. People.
And all the media outlets were saying not to go see it, and it was going to promote violence and all this garbage, and nothing happened.
That movie defines what has happened in these past few years perfectly. So, all these media outlets, Rotten Tomatoes, with a coordinated effort, I usually go boo when people talk about there's a conspiracy. But in this case, it was so on the surface that it's hard to deny. That they wanted to shut down this movie, made by liberals, mind you.
Yeah.
And the actor that played Joker is as far left as you could humanly go. The director and writer both are just normal liberal. They're not progressive far left, but they're liberal. They're kind of normal, what used to be liberal in the 90s. And the left attacked it, trying to destroy it. Something triggered them. I don't know what it was about it, but they decided it had to die before it even hit the gate. I do not think Joker was always going to make $1 billion. I think it was going to make 700 million maybe, or 800 million. But then trying to kill it boosted it even higher, and it got 1.3 billion or something in its run. When it started to get Oscars, those people wouldn't let go. Yeah. They were fuming, seething that this not only was the movie in my opinion, maybe the best comic book movie ever made. That's my opinion. But it was winning Oscars and being accepted and made huge money. There's no metric it did not exceed. And so they couldn't say, well, it didn't make as much as this, or it didn't, people didn't review it well, or something like that. The only thing, Rotten Tomatoes tried to hurt its score. So it has a ridiculous 69 or something. And you're like, really? You don't win countless Oscars and make $1 billion. Winning Oscars and $1 billion never go in hand. So this is a freaky thing. So anyways, but they're determined. And I was like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. And then I saw it. They all of a sudden started saying, win Joker, every time they'd win an award, they'd say, well, Birds of Prey. And I'm like, oh God, no. I'm a liberal. If you are telling me the left is hanging their hat on Birds of Prey over Joker, I am leaving mankind. This is ridiculous. Well, why would you? Who chooses that? That's the hill they're going to die on. I mean, this movie was Birds of Prey was always just a fun hip movie. You know, it was never meant to go toe to toe with an artistic masterpiece. And so when they started rallying up about it, I was like, this is going to be a bloodbath. They've put so much weight on this one-off little goofy movie. It's insane. And as they just built up, I was like, they're so pissed off about Joker that they see this Harley Quinn alternative to finally set the record straight. It will make more money. It will do all this. And it was never going to.
No. And now they're mad at Sonic because Sonic made more money than Birds of Prey.
So Birds of Prey tanks pretty flippin' hard. I don't think it was always going to. I think people just was put off by... I honestly was never... I didn't like Suicide Squad. I did not like... I mean, the only DC...
I wanted to like Suicide Squad so bad, but it was not good.
I'm not a fan of Margot Robbie. I may be rare in this. I don't despise every movie she's in, but I find that the movies I like her in, she don't talk. But, you know, she don't have a lot of lines or something. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That is one of my favorite movies. She was in that and she did fine, but then again, it wasn't like there was a huge amount of weight on her. And so her as Harley Quinn it just never felt right. Harley Quinn is that, I mean, she's a lowly a little, you know, or maybe I'm saying that wrong, Wally. You know, it's a grown woman that kind of acts like a little girl. That's the archetype. And then they found someone who's angular, you know, and all this. And I'm like, no, that's not it. That's not the, you know, and they based her off of, was it Yolita from the little rap group? Dang, I wish I had my chat. Ask somebody who I'm thinking of. What's their name?
Yeah, everybody in the chat. What's he thinking about?
Ninja and Yolita. Yolanda. Sorry, Yolanda and Ninja. Diane Ward. I got it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The rap band, they openly base Joker and Harley on those two. If you look at a picture of Ninja and Yolanda, you go, that would have worked. They didn't do that. They did a 50-year-old grandmother or a 60-year-old grandmother listening to her teens listen to that music and then her idea of what this was.
Yeah.
That's what they did. And I actually preferred the lady that played Enchantress. And I'll tell you this. One thing that really triggered me from the beginning with Suicide Squad, that Carla lady who played Enchantress, the main villain, she thought she was hired as Harley Quinn. She posted pictures of the announcement when she was signed on to do Suicide Squad. Mm-hmm. And she posted pictures that implying she was hired to do Harley Quinn. And I think she was. She makes a lot of sense. She's a model, But on the other hand, she does, the crazy faces and all that type stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of known for that. She would have been, I don't know if her acting skills were up to par, but it's Suicide Squad. So, I don't think we should really worry about that. She was the persona, though. She's that perfect persona for Harley Quinn that can be pretty, but is crazy and has this weird thing. Harley Quinn's not always supposed to look pretty. She's not that. That's not her thing. She's supposed to be crazy and have this weird innocent tone while being vicious and all this. I thought she would have been perfect for the role. But then all of a sudden the movie comes out and Margot was put in the role. And when I watched that movie, I'm like, why did they get the person that looks like a little girl to play Enchantress and dance around? And the one that looks like what Enchantress should do is playing Harley Quinn. Anyways, that always bothered me. Oh, I got way off track because I was just talking about, they're all triggered. A BOP was going to be the big show those conservatives that Joker was bad.
Yeah.
And then it tanks because of that. I probably would have done fine if they'd shut up. And then Sonic comes in. Now, to be fair, no, I do not think Sonic was destined to be the highest grossing video game movie.
I don't either.
I think a lot of people was like, you know what? I'm going to go see Sonic just to screw you guys. And I wanted to go, but I don't have no time currently to watch movies. But because the Sonic does look good. I'm not saying that Sonic looked bad. It looks very good. But those are usually the type of movies I watch at home. But it does look really good. But I think there's certainly, I'm thinking progressives, the progressive thing that has been very, that toxic side of it is seeing that a lot of the things that those promotion things are backfiring on them. And, I think it's backfiring on everybody. When one side of the extremists try to push something, all they do is promote the other side. We see that with comic books, Mm-hmm. I wish those psychopaths would attack me because I'm stuck at $580 perpetually. I need a little bit of that heat, baby.
That's what got my first book pushed over was they just kept attacking me, and it was like the more they attacked, the more people saw the book and the more people backed.
Yeah, and I actually, sure, I don't want to be in a Twitter battle, but it is ironic that the people that are in Twitter battles, their comics are just promoted. I guess it's this, there's no such thing as bad publicity. Bill Cosby would say no, but in most cases, this is true. It's not always true, but usually, especially when it comes to frivolous. I think there's no such thing as frivolous bad publicity. If it's crap, if people are just trying to screw you over, it's still good for you. It all works. And so anyways, let's see. I think we covered a lot of things.
We talked about everything today.
Yeah, it was fun. What time?
We've been streaming for almost 2 hours.
Wow, it don't feel like that. Oh goodness. But okay, so one thing I wanted, I'm sure everybody's left by now, but so it'll just be me and you here talking. One of the most surprising artists, I love Tony Sizzle's work when I just come across his Twitter deal. And he has a drawing. I found him on Facebook, I think. He has a drawing of the Joker that looks identical to the movie when he's on the show with Murray. And he based it off of The Dark Knight. Now, The Dark Knight never shows that angle really, and it's never quite like that, and the Joker kind of looks different. But that's what he based it on. Anyways, it looks like a flippin' screen catch from Joker. And I look, he did that in early 2018, before the movie was even filmed.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And I looked at that, and I was like, what? Anyways, but neither here nor there. That's just something I saw. His cover for that flippin' ash can for Napalm Brothers
Mm-hmm.
is damn amazing. But that was when I had him do when he drew Sober. I didn't know what he was. I wasn't super fluent with what his style was or anything. And if you want Tony Sizzle to talk himself up, he's not going to. So he comes into it like he's kind of like the pool, like the guy at the pool table who's all like, oh, I've played a few times, and then you play him and he just destroys you. He's a lot like that. He comes in very subtle and humble, but then just rocks it. But his when he goes, okay, here's my pages for the Sober. He finished it or whatever. He's wicked fast too, which is a bizarre combination. But I was just blown away because it's not just. This is a deal. People go, oh, there's artists, comic book artists, but it's like, no, there's different things. A cover artist is not particularly a good sequential artist. They're totally different skill sets. You hire a cover artist for your cover, and you hire sequential art for your sequential. And he kind of, his style really goes in between that. I saw him as more a sequential artist, but then, yeah, that cover for Napalm Brothers, that Ashcan, I hadn't seen that. I somehow missed it. I was even in the conversation, totally missed it. And my wife actually stumbled across it. She goes, did you see this cover he did for? I was like, no. And I looked at it, I was like, son of a gun, with the dude sitting in the helicopter and stuff.
Mm-hmm. It's awesome.
Been amazing. And then but yeah, I was so his work when he sent me those pages for Sober, his sequential art, and that's I think there's not enough. I almost never hear anybody use the term sequential art other than myself, but that's a whole different thing, And he is a master. I've seen very few people, especially in just like indie comics, it's kind of the outline deal, to be so good at sequential art. He has these angles. A lot of artists are afraid to do too many camera angles because you have to be able to draw that angle. It gets difficult. I'm the number one about avoiding really complex camera angles. I'm secure in certain things, but that's not it. I'm not the most dynamic interior artist there ever was. But him, it is just all over the place and little details like crazy. Like this, I laid out the frames, like just saying what they should be like there should be 4 stacked, and you see these slight changes. But then he had this, in the first frame, this cat walking, and then it's further and it leaps off the thing in the final one. All these little details. Anyways, but yeah, I see he kind of came in out of nowhere for me, and is really, yeah, I'm pretty amazed with a lot of the stuff he does. And yeah, it's just very interesting. It's so different. It's not anything like I don't think there's anybody else like him in indie comics, I'd safely assume.
I think he might be the coolest dude for sure.
Yeah, he is.
You watch his videos, he's just so cool. He's just like, I'm so cool.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's I watch because he said, "Oh, I'm doing a video for Napalm Brothers, and then I'm gonna do a video for Saving the World." And I was like, you released the coolest videos I've ever seen, right?
I know it, man. It makes me want to quit doing anything because here I am acting like a moron on the internet, and then you see Tony Sizzle, and he's like, "I'm so cool. Watch me draw this picture."
I never met him in real life. Here's my guess. Have you ever seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
No, I've not seen it yet.
No, you need to see that movie. Anyways,
it's on my list.
There's this guy called Cliff. He's the best friend of the main character, Leonardo DiCaprio's character. I am convinced that's Tony Sizzle. I might be wrong. He's played as Brad Pitt, who plays him, that guy. Anyways, it at least captures his brand very well. But yeah, anyways, yeah, I was his art has been very I love it. And that was like Sober. I knew my art it just leans a little I have a little bit of cartoon flair to it. So there's some scripts where they're really dark, and I'm like, I have a dark style. You see a few frames of that, Kelly Jones type thing, like huge dark black shadows and stuff. And I do that sometimes. But when it comes to my human figures, I always do lean a little bit. Like I like the ears, like open car doors and stuff like that. But so having him capture that script was, I'd never had anybody draw from one of my scripts before in my entire life. It's always me. And so that was, very, very cool to have. And it was the same with having when Illustrator Monk. Oh, everybody, like I get people to draw Kira or Nora, or sometimes, they just send me stuff, and that's really awesome. I love people sending me artwork of my characters. That's like,
I'm gonna draw your character, and you're gonna change your mind on that. You're gonna be like, I wish people would stop sending me stuff.
Hell no,
Doug.
I'll print it and I'll put by Doug Garrett. But so nobody draws Kira the same, and I don't know. So Monk was the first one to draw Kira, other than myself. So I'd drawn her for years and stuff, and he draws her. She has these awesome boots, and like it has this. I always drew her in black and white, so her costume is black and white generally. Her mask is black cape, white mainly. I'm not very good at color. Well, all the other characters are very colorful, and I was like, there's not a lot of black and white costume characters. So anyways, so I did that. He added these yellow accents, and then she had these awesome like thigh-high boots. He made these little alterations that I was like, man, I'm gonna steal that. And she has these big welding gloves in my comic. He did no gloves, and it come out to this cool sleeve thing. And I was like, I don't know why I make her wear gloves. And I think Monk was right. And then I'm gonna say his name wrong. Ryan, I've never said it out loud. Ryan Faust. He did this pinup. Oh my God, it is flipping amazing of her. Like he captured her perfectly. I'm like, have you guys read my comic book? Because it feels like you have. She's just leaning up against the wall eating hamburgers, and her costumes all done. He had his own design. It was kind of like a Princess Leia robe, is how I describe it. Because it didn't have the zipper down the middle, and it was a bit different. And I was like, well, that's awesome. He has his own take. Like Monk has his own, I have my own, Monk has his own. And then when Sashi sent in the cover for number 2, she has her own take that's closer to mine than the others, I think, to some degree, but also the yellow accents. So this is the funny thing that's come off of all this. Evidently, there's yellow in her costume, but that was never intended. It's just every other artist I've ever met said, there's yellow in her costume. And even my wife, she did the animation for the beginning of that video I have up on my deal, and she put yellow accents. I'm like, my God, people.
I just listened to Monk.
Oh, okay. My wife says she just listened to Monk, so and that might be it. Monk might have set the standard. I do love the yellow accents, though. I believe that everybody else was very much right. I don't disagree with them, but it's very interesting that Batman is the same thing from 30s to now. Every artist has had a say, Went from the purple gloves to then someone said, make them up here, put the spikes out, that evolution. And to be able to have some of that idea in just my little old goofy comic is really cool. Different artists putting in their 2 cents and stuff. But, okay, that's what I got.
Well, I think we probably ought to wrap this up. My dog's been in here poking around and he's ready to go outside.
We'll let everybody loose.
Everybody needs to go and check out Saving the World.
Yeah, I need your money.
Let me find... I don't want to pull it up there in front of everybody. Oh, I totally did. Your face is gone now. But let me pull up Saving the World and grab the link. Everybody, if you haven't, go and check this out. Now the Bunderdome says a few minutes ago when you were saying, I thought you said she has these awesome boots.
Hmm.
He said, I thought you were going to say she has these awesome boobs.
That goes without saying. It's kind of become my trademark, evidently.
It's so funny.
I was trying to go with a high-end marketing scheme, but then when I said ginger boobs, it went viral. So I was like, well, give the people what they want.
There you go. But everybody, go check out that book. Like I said, I think it should already be higher than it is.
Me too.
It just needs to be in front of the right people. So if you've already backed it or you don't have the money, at least share the campaign. Share it on Twitter, on Facebook, wherever you are, and get it out there. Get it in front of people. That helps more than anything. But you got any last words there before we go?
Oh, I've said plenty.
Well, I'm glad you stopped by, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I'll definitely have you back here again soon.
Sounds cool.
But everybody, we're going to wrap up, so we'll see y'all later. Bye.
Bye.